That clause is a trap. See ya. The voice cut through the boardroom like a crack of thunder on a quiet night. Everyone turned. At the glass doorway of the 38th floor, a girl stood in scuffed sneakers, a faded hoodie, and a janitor's badge clipped to her chest. She didn't belong here. And yet, she had everyone's attention. CEO Martin Hale froze mid-signature. His Mont Blanc pen hovered above the dotted line of a $600 million merger agreement. The smile on his face practiced, polished, powerful, faltered. Across from him sat Vincent Dorsey, the charismatic head of Vanguard Capital, still grinning. But his jaw tightened. "Excuse me," Dorsey said, his voice like silk over steel. The girl stepped forward. Her voice shook slightly, but her eyes didn't. "Page 14, subparagraph C," she said. "That clause reverses the liability. If anything goes wrong after the merger, your company takes the full hit, not his." A tense silence fell over the room. Chairs creaked. Paper rustled. One executive squinted at his printout. Another tapped on a tablet. Martin Hale narrowed his eyes at the contract, then at the girl. "Who are you?" he asked. "Layla Thompson," she said. "I clean your glass walls on Tuesday nights." Nervous laughter rippled. Someone muttered, "Security." But Martin didn't move. Not yet. He looked at the paper, then back at her. Her words echoed in the air like something far heavier than they should have been. That clause is a trap. And for the first time in his 30-year career, Martin Hale didn't sign. Not yet. Layla Thompson wasn't born into boardrooms or billion-dollar deals. She was born 3 blocks from the Red Line in South Chicago, raised by a mother who cleaned corporate floors so her daughter could walk into better ones. Every Tuesday night, while Denise Thompson vacuumed offices and polished brass elevator buttons at Hale Group, Layla came along not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She brought her old tablet, secondhand from a library donation bin. While her mom worked, Layla sat quietly in break rooms, reading employee handbooks and company policies like they were bedtime stories. She didn't scroll through endless social feeds like other teens. She downloaded PDFs of SEC filings and watched YouTube videos on how corporate fraud happens and how it's buried. Her favorite story wasn't Cinderella. It was Enron. She didn't understand every word, but she understood what mattered. Sometimes the truth is right there, hiding in plain sight. And sometimes, the only person who sees it is the one everyone overlooks. She never planned to speak up, never planned to step into the boardroom. But that night, when she saw the folder left in the copy machine tray thick, stump it. Final version curiosity sparked something deeper. It wasn't nosiness. It was instinct. She flipped through it slowly, page by page. And when she reached page 14, her breath caught. It was buried in small print. Subparagraph C, the liability reversal. She read it twice, then again and again. She didn't have a law degree, but she had something better: common sense and a clean conscience. Layla didn't sleep that night. She sat at the edge of her bed, rehearsing what she might say if she ever had the chance. She never thought she'd get one. But when she saw the boardroom lights still on the next evening and watched Martin Hale about to sign, her feet moved before her fear could catch up. She opened the door and said the thing no one expected. Layla didn't even realize she'd said it out loud. Her heart was pounding so hard it echoed in her ears, drowning out the stunned silence in the room. But she stood her ground. Across the long walnut conference table, a dozen high-level executives stared at her like she was a ghost, some with confusion, some with condescension. A young man in a navy suit nudged his colleague. "She's the janitor's daughter." "Right." Another whispered. "She shouldn't even be in here." Martin Hale slowly lowered his pen. He looked at Layla again. This time, not as a disruption, but as a puzzle. "Subparagraph C?" he asked. Voice low. Layla nodded. "Yes." "Seal." It shifts all legal and financial risk from Vanguard to Hale Group. If there's fraud, lawsuits, or even a market crash post-merger, you take the fall, not them. A ripple moved through the room. Executives shuffled papers. One woman flipped directly to page 14. Her brow furrowed. Vincent Dorsey kept smiling, but his fingers tightened slightly around his glass. "That clause has been reviewed by top counsel," he said smoothly. "It's standard. It's deliberate." Layla replied, "It's buried deep. But it's not careless. It's designed to look boring, so you skip it. But if you sign it, your company bleeds, and they walk away clean." Dorsey's smile twitched. "Young lady," he said, almost indulgently, "with respect, this is grown-up business, not a high school civics project." Martin didn't respond. He reached for the contract and turned to the page. There it was. Subparagraph C. He read it once, then again. His jaw tensed. "Who left this contract in the copy tray?" he asked. No one answered. Layla's mother, Denise, peeked through the glass from the hallway, eyes wide with panic. Layla had broken every unspoken rule. She wasn't supposed to read. She wasn't supposed to speak. She definitely wasn't supposed to walk into that room. But she had. And now the question wasn't if she was right. It was what happened because of it. The silence cracked. "Security," someone finally muttered. Two men in black blazers moved toward her. Layla didn't run. She didn't cry. She simply stood still as their hands touched her arms, as if guiding a child out of a room she was never meant to enter. Her mother burst in from the hallway, voice sharp and terrified. "Layla, what did you do?" "I told the truth," Layla whispered. One of the executives, the youngest at the table, looked uneasy. He adjusted his tie, glanced at Martin Hale, then back at the girl being led away. Martin said nothing. He hadn't turned the page again. He was staring straight at the table, lost in a place no one else could follow. Vincent Dorsey let out a soft chuckle. "Well," he said, voice calm but edged. "Now that the drama's over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because just before Layla crossed the threshold out of the boardroom, she looked back, and her eyes met Martin Hale's. There was no anger in her face, no plea, just one final message. "Look again." Martin blinked, and for a split second, he wasn't looking at a janitor's daughter. He was looking at the only person in the room who had actually read the damn contract. The door clicked shut behind her. Martin's hand slowly moved away from the pen. He didn't sign. He didn't speak. But the deal had paused. The boardroom was quiet, but Martin Hale's mind was loud. After the door closed behind Layla Thompson, he sat in silence, fingers steepled under his chin, eyes fixed on the contract. Vincent kept speaking about synergies, shareholder value, post-deal expansion, but Martin wasn't listening. He flipped to page 14 again, subparagraph C. He read it, then read it again. And for the first time, he noticed something strange. Not just what it said, but how it was written. The phrasing was too clean, too polished, like it had been run through 10 rounds of legal laundering until it no longer resembled what it really was. A trap. He turned to his general counsel, sitting 2 seats away. Did your team review this version? The lawyer blinked. We reviewed the draft last week. Not this copy. Martin nodded slowly. Get me every version since the start of negotiations. I want a red line comparison. Vincent smiled tightly. Martin, with all due respect. But Martin held up a hand. No more respect. Vincent, just facts. Across the room, the youngest executive, the one who had looked uneasy earlier, stood and whispered something to the legal aide. Something had shifted. That night, Martin didn't go home. He stayed in his office, sleeves rolled up, eyes bloodshot. By 1 a.m., he had every draft lined up on the table. And on draft, version 7C, the clause didn't exist. It had been inserted later, silently, without discussion, exactly as Layla said. Martin opened a secure email channel to his old friend in corporate compliance. Subject line, need a second pair of eyes, and maybe a third. The game had just changed. By morning, Martin Hale had confirmed it. The clause wasn't just a careless oversight. It was inserted, specifically, quietly. A digital footprint led back to the revision history. And the metadata, it didn't lie. The insertion was made from an internal login. Someone with full executive access. Someone inside Hale Group. At 7:42 p.m. 6 days earlier. Logged in from a company-issued tablet. The username was masked. But Martin's IT team broke the encryption. The ID that made the change. C. Hale. His wife. Celeste. He stared at the screen like it was a ghost. His pulse throbbed in his neck. He rubbed his face with both hands, trying to process what couldn't be ignored. Celeste had helped draft the merger documents. She wasn't legal counsel, but she advised everything. She'd insisted this was the deal of the decade, that it had to go through, that he just needed to trust her. Trust. He thought of Layla's words. If you sign it, your company bleeds, and they walk away clean. And suddenly it all made sense. The urgency, the quiet push, the way Celeste had dismissed his concerns. He opened a folder labeled Archived Legal Partnerships, cross-referenced a few vendor contracts from 2 years ago. There it was again. A quiet overlap. The same liability clause slightly reworded in a merger with a shell firm in Dallas. Who signed off on that one? V. Dorsey. Vincent again. Martin leaned back in his chair, stunned. His world wasn't just under threat. It was being carved out from the inside. Martin reached into a locked drawer, pulled out an old business card. Robert Ellison, corporate risk auditor, retired. He dialed the number, hands trembling. If there was one person who might have seen this coming, it was the man they forced into early retirement. Robert Ellison hadn't set foot in a corporate office in almost 3 years. But when Martin Hale called, he didn't hesitate. By noon, he was sitting across from Martin in the executive lounge of the Hale Tower Grayer. Then Martin remembered, but still sharp-eyed, still listening like a man who never stopped connecting the dots. This clause, Martin said, sliding the contract across the table, didn't come from Vanguard's standard template. It was engineered. Ellison nodded slowly. I warned your board about that language 2 years ago. They ignored it. They told me you were overcautious. Martin muttered. Ellison smiled without humor. That's what they call people who notice patterns before the fire starts. Together, they opened the old audit reports. Ellison traced lineages, offshore payments, circular vendors, delayed tax filings. and a name kept appearing faint, indirect. But there, Vincent Dorsey. Later that evening, Martin made another call, not to a board member, not to the press, but to a girl, Layla Thompson. She didn't recognize the number at first. When she answered, her voice was cautious. "Hello, Layla," Martin said. "I owe you an apology and a seat at the table." There was a long pause. Then she said, quietly, "I'm listening." The next day, Layla returned not as a janitor's daughter, not as a disruption, but as a witness. She walked into the private meeting room on the 34th floor and was met by someone unexpected, a tall black woman in a fitted blazer, holding a leather case, stood to greet her. "Layla Thompson," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Victoria Chan, civil rights attorney. I'm here to make sure your voice doesn't get buried." Layla looked to Martin, then back at Victoria, and for the first time since this began, she exhaled. She wasn't alone anymore. Inside a soundproof conference room, 3 people sat shoulder to shoulder: a betrayed CEO, a teenage whistleblower, and a lawyer who specialized in fighting for the unheard. The storm was coming. But now, they had a map. The threats didn't come in waves. They came in whispers. First, Layla's school called her mother. Someone had anonymously filed a report, claiming Layla had accessed confidential systems, that she posed a security risk. Denise Thompson sat stone-faced across from the principal, Layla Race, gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. "She's just a girl," Denise said quietly. "She reads. That's all she does." But the next day, their apartment buzzer rang at 3 a.m. No one was there. Then, a note slipped under the door. "You want to clean toilets the rest of your life. Stay out of boardrooms." That same morning, Hale Group's internal server experienced a malfunction. 3 backup drives, including the one holding early draft contracts, were reported corrupted. The digital trail was vanishing. Ellison, furious, slammed his laptop shut. Someone's trying to kill the paper trail. Victoria Chan filed an emergency injunction to freeze all documentation and emails related to the merger. Martin tried to keep calm, but even he felt it slipping. Then came the phone call. From an unlisted number, Victoria answered on speaker. A man's voice, deep and slow. "You think you're heroes, but we write the rules. Not you. Back off, or she disappears." The room went silent. Layla stood near the window. "Pal. Quiet." Denise placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "I'm pulling her out of this," she whispered. "I don't care what she saw." Layla turned, eyes fierce but wet. "They're scared." "Mom, that means we're close." That night, Layla received a text from a secure source. "I have the missing contract logs. You were right. Meet tomorrow." No name, no number, just a sliver of hope. And she grabbed it. The morning sky over Chicago was the color of steel. Inside Hale Tower, Layla sat in a secure conference room, fingers trembling over a flash drive. The anonymous message had been real. Inside the drive, contract logs, revision metadata, a series of internal emails showing the clause had been planted with full knowledge, and the email chain signed off by 2 names. C. Hale. V. Dorsey. Layla looked up at Victoria. "It's all here." Victoria didn't blink. She opened her case file, pulled out a motion already drafted, and added the final piece. At 11:37 a.m., She filed a whistleblower protection petition for Layla Thompson and an injunction to halt the Hale Vanguard merger by 1 o'clock p.m. The story had broken. A headline spread across financial news tickers. Teen janitor's daughter halts. Billion-dollar merger with single warning. Some laughed. Others clicked. Millions read the details. By 4 p.m., news vans swarmed the sidewalk outside Hale Tower. Talk radio picked it up. Podcasts dissected every line. Stock forums buzzed with speculation. Layla's face, a still from a school photo, flashed across headlines. Some praised her. Others questioned her. But no one ignored her. That night, Martin Hale walked into the Hale Foundation gala alone. The room was full of Chicago's elite, donors, investors, media, and Martin, no longer smiling, took the mic. He didn't wait for introductions. He looked directly into the cameras. "I'm not here as a CEO tonight," he said. "I'm here as a man who almost signed away everything." Gasps. Flashes. It continued. "And the only reason I didn't is because someone we never noticed dared to speak." In the back of the ballroom, Layla watched from a monitor, eyes wide, heart pounding. For the first time, she wasn't fighting in the shadows anymore. The courthouse steps groaned under the weight of reporters, cameras, and whispers. Inside courtroom 6B. The atmosphere was tight. Vincent Dorsey sat in an impeccable suit, flanked by attorneys. Calm, controlled, like nothing could touch him. Beside him, Celeste Hale, expression unreadable, hands folded in her lap. At the front, Victoria Chan stood tall and poised. She spoke not with outrage, but with precision. "Members of the jury, this is not just about a contract," she said. "It's about deliberate deception, planted risk, and a pattern that spans across multiple companies, multiple victims." Behind her, charts flashed on the screen. Offshore accounts, email metadata, redline edits showing how subparagraph C came to be. The jury leaned forward. Then, the moment came. "Your Honor," Victoria said. "The prosecution calls Layla Thompson to the stand." Gasps. Evan Vincent's eyes narrowed. Layla rose slowly, her blazer too big, her hands slightly shaking, but her voice solid. She placed her hand on the Bible, took the oath, sat down. "Miss Thompson," Victoria asked, "can you explain how you came across the clause in question?" Layla nodded. "I was helping my mom during her cleaning shift. I saw the folder in the copy room. I wasn't supposed to touch it, but I did." A pause. "What made you stop at page 14? Layla looked toward the jury. The language didn't feel right. It looked quiet, but it meant something loud. "And why did you speak up?" Layla turned toward Celeste and Vincent. Just because I clean doesn't mean I don't see." The courtroom froze. Not even the judge blinked. From a cleaning cart to a courtroom witness stand, Layla's voice now echoed in silence. And silence was powerful. The verdict came on a rainy Friday. Guilty. Vincent Dorsey was indicted on corporate fraud, wire manipulation, and conspiracy. Celeste Hale, named as a co-conspirator, resigned from all board positions. The merger, dead. The Hale Group stock wobbled, then climbed, not because of profit, but because investors believed again. Martin Hale stood before the board 2 weeks later, not as the man who once built Hale Group, but as the man who almost lost it He reinstated whistleblower protection programs, rehired Robert Ellison as chief compliance officer, and made one final announcement. The janitor program is being renamed, he said. It's now called the Thompson Fellowship. Full scholarships, leadership training, and a seat at the table. A round of quiet applause followed. That same month, Layla Thompson returned to school. No press, no headlines, just a girl walking quietly through the hallway as students parted to let her pass. Some nodded, some smiled, a few just stared, but no one doubted. At home, Denise Thompson stood at the kitchen counter. Her uniform still smelled of bleach, but beside her, Layla was reading. Not a school book, but a case law file. What is that? Denise asked. Layla smiled softly. Something Victoria gave me. Then, after a beat, I think I want to help people like her someday. Layla didn't walk out with money, or fame, or a promotion. She walked out with something bigger. A voice. And the truth that one voice, when brave enough, can stop an empire from falling silent. Sometimes, the most powerful truth doesn't come from the boardroom, but from someone pushing a mop at night, watching, listening, and daring to speak. Layla didn't just expose a hidden clause. She reminded us that courage has no rank. Now it's your turn. What would you have done if you were her? Have you ever been ignored? Dismissed, yet saw something no one else did? Drop a comment below, not just what you think, but what you feel. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're a mirror, and we want to hear your reflection.